Hiya, I'm Bruce Fumi. On the 30th of January 1649, Charles I of England walked out of a window of the Banqueting House in Whitehall in London. He was wearing an extra singlet against the cold of that winter's day. He said he didn't want to shiver so as to give the impression of fear. He gave a short speech during which he said that he was going from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown. Although the crowd was kept at such a distance, I wonder if they really heard anything in that winter's breeze. He told the executioner that he would say a short prayer and then give a signal when he was ready. He lay forward, put his head on the block, and when he stretched out his arms, his head was severed in a single blow. What I want to know is, who killed Charles I of England? After all, he was Charles I of Scotland as well. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then hit the subscribe button at the bottom right at any time and ring the notification bell to make sure that they tell you when I publish new videos. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. The 30th of January, remember that date. The English were getting pretty good at chopping the heads off Stuart monarchs. They'd done it to Charles's grandma, Mary Queen of Scots, almost exactly to the day 62 years before. Needless to say, Scots protested vehemently at this horrendous second regicide of Scotland's royal house. Now, I'm not a royalist myself, but I'm still pretty hacked off. So how did it get to this? Turn round and I'll show you. This whole area had been a place of Scottish royalty since the time of Malcolm Canmore. 7 Scottish kings are buried in the abbey next door. This is the ruin of Dunfermline Palace. It was the birthplace of Charles I of Scotland. Coincidentally, Charles I of England as well. Oh, and Ireland. Don't forget Ireland. Charles had followed his dad, James VI, when his court went south to England after the death of Elizabeth. So this is the birthplace of the last British monarch to be born in Scotland. And on the 30th of January 1649, they chopped off his head. Have you watched my video, We Started the English Civil War? You should. I'll leave a link at the end. For now, you just need to know that Scotland was way more involved in the English Civil War than a lot of people think. Now, I know there are Americans that watch this who struggle with the concept of England. So, for their benefit, this is Scotland. This is England and Wales. This is Great Britain. This is the United Kingdom. And this is the British Isles. Got that? Okay, so stop it. So, there's going to be a video at the end to tell you how we got to this point. But Charles I went to war with Presbyterian Covenanting Scots. Daddy, were all the Scots Presbyterian Covenanters? Of course not. But the ones who weren't were hiding in the cellar. Now, these bishops' wars didn't go well for Charles, and he signed a truce, a peace treaty. Then he opened the English Parliament to say, see, when the jocks aren't looking, why not give me some cash so I can crush them? Now, the English Parliament didn't exactly refuse. It's just that they gave a list of conditions for the cash that Charles saw as unacceptable. So he shut the Parliament down again. The Scots invaded England and took Newcastle, at least for a while. Now, Parliament was opening and shutting like a pair of net curtains on a middle-class housing estate when number 9 has the police at the door. And Charles had to go back to Parliament with his tail between his legs. The thing is that Charles was having similar problems with the Irish as the Scots. At least similar enough for this 10-minute video. And it was at this Parliament that the disagreement between Crown and Parliament broke out in the English Civil War. The first one. Oh aye, there were 3, you know. Suffice to say that the English were fighting amongst themselves with a bit of tetchiness up here and across the Irish Sea. In England, broadly speaking, Parliament held London in the southeast and Royalists held the north. This is an envelope. There's a map scribbled on the back. Personally, I wanted to use a fag packet, but my wife wouldn't let me. Now remember, this short video is not about the English Civil War in general, it's about the 30th of January and who killed Charles I. So let's focus. The First English Civil War was grinding to a bit of a stalemate, and the English parliamentarian side looked for an advantage. Oh aye, you come running to us new, don't you? English parliamentarians and Presbyterian Covenanting Scots agreed the Solemn League and Covenant. Sounds serious. Basically, a Scottish Presbyterian army would join in on the side of the parliamentarians on condition that England became a Presbyterian country. You see, we just wanted the purity of the Christian faith to be upheld. Oh, and a big bag of cash as well. And so, on the 25th of September 1643, the Scots and the English agreed the Solemn League and Covenant. In January 1644, an army of over 20,000 Scots re-invaded the north of England, Newcastle, Durham, York. Now the video that I'm going to leave at the end will show you how it was Scots who started the English Civil War. Here, I'm saying that it was also Scots who turned the tide of the English Civil War in favour of Parliament. What about Oliver Cromwell's new model army? Shut it. Now don't get me wrong, Scots were essentially royalists for the Stuart cause. It's just that they were Presbyterian royalists. And if you're going to make us choose... In May 1645, Charles tried to negotiate a peace, but there were two huge sticking points. The English Parliament wanted to control the armed forces, and the Solemn League and Covenant demanded that England become a Presbyterian country. So the fighting continued until September, when Prince Rupert surrendered his royalist army. Charles himself was cornered in Wales, desperately trying to come up with any other plan. He sent his son, the future Charles II, to France. Then he skulked around the country until royalists in Scotland under the Duke of Montrose were defeated. The game was a bogey. And eventually, in 1646, he handed himself in to the Scots camp near Nottingham. They took him north to Newcastle. They pointed out that the gig was clearly up. This whole thing had started because Charles had tried to impose the Church of England on Scotland. Clearly, the only sensible way to end it here was for Charles to agree that England would become Presbyterian. Charles refused. And so, on the 30th of January 1647, the Scots got a big bag of cash and they handed Charles over to the English. Exactly 2 years later to the day, to howls of protest from Scotland, Charles I walked through that banqueting house window to an event never before experienced or even imagined: the execution of a British monarch for treason against the state. So who killed Charles I? It was all a messy business, and quite a few things happened between the 30th of January 1647 and the 30th of January 1649. And I don't think anyone comes out entirely blame-free, including Charles. I'm just saying that if you think the English Civil War was an English thing, you're mistaken. For more on the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, why not watch my video, We Started the English Civil War? You'll find a link here. To become a member and enjoy ad-free videos and other stuff as well, click the white tab up there. In the meantime, how many dochas can be a lamb alive? Cheerio and Rasta.